Welcome to Board Certified, expert interview episodes about medical licensing exams and healthcare careers. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we offer affordable adaptive online prep courses for the PTCE, USMLE Step 1, MCAT, NPTE, CSCS, and others. Each of our courses contains everything you need to succeed, which can include comprehensive study guides, video lessons, thousands of practice questions powered by our spaced repetition algorithm, and full length practice exams. You can get a free trial by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to save 10%. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Lorraine Lohner from PTCB Exam Tutor, the YouTube channel, and I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Lohner, and I am behind the channel PTCB Exam Tutor. So, I wrote a book in response to the change in the PTCB's blueprint, having medications 40%, which is a major part of the PTCB. The book is titled Top 200 Drugs Memorizing Made Ridiculously Easy, and it's available now, and it's been very helpful to a lot of our students.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about the medication section of the PTCE, which is 40% officially of the test, but really it's over half when you think about all the questions that are related to medication, tangentially and things like that. And in your book, I think you mentioned that you've got some tips for how to approach the problem of keeping all these medication things in your head. How do you want to kick this off? What do you say when people are first learning about this in your classes or something like
We'll
that?
just go over the 10 tips in remembering the top 200 drugs, tips for easy recall. All right, we'll stick to that one. First one would be grouping them by class. I always tell the students that I don't like the word memorizing, though I do know that the book has memorize on it, but I'm not a fan of memorization because memorization is not long term. It's very short term. But if you understand what the drug does to the body and how your body would react to it, it's more long term. So, grouping the drugs by class is my very first tip on how to have an easy
Mm.
recall of the drug. Let me define two classes though, because on the PTCE, they'll ask you what the class of the drug is, but there are two types. We have what we call a pharmacological class and a therapeutic class. And this is how I differentiate the two. Why is this important first? Why is it important to know? Because on the PTCE, they will ask you what the class of the drug is. And students ask me, do we need to know the pharmacological class or the therapeutic class? And I say both. But let me define each one. So, the pharmacological class, I put it this way, it's something that's hard to pronounce, like a beta blocker, or hard to picture if you're not doing organic chemistry or inorganic chemistry, because the pharmacological class is based off of the chemical configuration of the drug most of the time. So if you're not in the medical field, it's hard to picture. But a therapeutic class for beta blocker would be antihypertensive. Anti is against, hyper is high, tensive is tension or pressure in your blood. So you know that a therapeutic class antihypertensive would be a drug that lowers blood pressure. It's more like the medical term of the use of the drug. So, which one do you study? Why do you have to group them by class? Because, yes, the PTCE asks what the class of these drugs are. And let me tell you, once you group them by class, there will be clues. Because there will be most common roots, prefixes, and suffixes about the drug. And if you know that this is common to that group, you know what the class is, which is going to be our next tip
Mhm.
later on. But you might want to add something on grouping them by class, but that's my number one tip.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense because, like you said, if you're answering test questions, you might not even necessarily need to know exactly what the drug does so much as what kind of family it's in. Certainly, I've seen that on other types of tests, the GRE. which is not related at all. You don't have to know the vocab exactly. You just have to know that it means roughly happy or whatever.
Right.
And so that's the same idea here, it sounds.
Yeah, because there will be patterns, there will be groups, there will be something common in the family or the class. And that's why that's my first tip, group them by class. Because when we get the top 200 drugs, it's grouped, it's organized by sales. And we don't care about sales when we're taking the PTCE. We care about how are we going to remember all this 200. And there's a way to do that. And you're not realizing that by grouping them by class, you already remembered 20 of them.
And it's also basically going to help you in the future when you're like, what does this thing do on the job, right? I think no matter how good you are at memorization, you're probably not going to remember every single one of the top 200 drugs a year or two from now. But you'll remember that proto, that prefix means this. And so you'll be able to figure things out by process of elimination
Yeah, like Oval
or
is
deduction.
for
Yeah.
hypertension, it's a beta blocker. Prills are ACE inhibitors. It's also for hypertension, though you can find tables on those most commonly used prefixes, roots, and suffixes. They're readily available on the internet too.
You just want to go down the list of tips. I was wondering whether it was Latin or not.
Latin.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah, so
sense.
it's Latin. That's why when I explain to them, how do you remember P? Oh, like how does that make sense that it's by mouth? And I explained that it's from the Latin word per orem, which is by mouth. And half of my class are Spanish speakers. So to help them, I tell them por oral. And they're like, oh, wow, cool. Same as PC, which is post sebum in Latin or after meals. But for my Spanish speakers, I would say post comer. And they're like, oh, I got it. Because Spanish came from Latin as well as the mother tongue or the mother language. And so this is also very similar to grouping them by class. My second tip, though, is mnemonics. So, what's mnemonics? It's creating something, a powerful memory aid that really helps you remember things, catchy phrases, acronyms. Say, for example, a mnemonic to remember some common classes. ARBs, or ARB, stands for angiotensin receptor blockers. And ARBs, fortunately, has a common suffix. They end in sartan, losartan, valsartan, irbesartan. Another mnemonic would be calcium channel blockers. That will be dipin, drugs that end in dipin, such as amlodipine, nifedipine. And by the way, all of these mnemonics I'm going to talk about are anti-hypertensive. Therapeutic class, anti-hypertensive. Pharmacological class is what I'm saying right now. Beta blockers. Beta blockers is the pharmacological class. Therapeutic class would be antihypertensive as well. And there's a common suffix for beta blockers. Olol, metoprolol, atenolol, propranolol. So this is when the educated guesses come into play. I'm big at educational guesses. Or as my students would say, oh, I made an educational guess on this test. Did you get it right? I did, because of the common suffix or the mnemonics. ACE inhibitors. ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. Inhibitors stop, right? It has a common suffix too called that you can say pril. Enalapril, lisinopril, captopril. So when you see pril, you know that they're for hypertension. But if you want to be more specific, they're ACE inhibitors. And then we have diuretics, hydrochlorothiazide, furosemides, spironolactone, and that those one, two, three, four, five, four, I call them ABCDs of hypertension. That's another mnemonic. So you could do ARBs, ACE inhibitor for your A, B for your beta blocker, C for your calcium channel blocker, and D for your diuretics, all used for hypertension. We just memorized in probably 2 minutes, probably about 25 drugs just right now. So it's tied to grouping by class and mnemonics. So tip number one, grouping by class. Tip number two, mnemonics, and use your most commonly used prefixes, roots, and suffixes. By the way, I don't want to forget, this prefixes, roots, and suffixes only work for generic names, not for brand names.
Hmm. Yeah, the generic names are probably what you actually want anyway.
Yeah. Though in hospitals or doctors and nurses talk to you in brand name.
So they won't ask you for ibuprofen, they'll ask you for Advil and
Yeah, over the phone all the time. It's
okay.
like the brand name. That's why I tell them you still have to remember the brand name because they're used to that. It became like a home brand, like a household name, Tylenol, if they're asking for acetaminophen.
Mm-hmm.
You get a Tylenol, but we're going to give them acetaminophen anyway.
Yeah. And also it's one, it's the same thing. Two, you don't need to know those for the test.
You do because we have duplications as well as part of the medications, part of the test. They don't ask a lot of brand names, but they do. Can you pass without really memorizing the brand names? I think that's a secret. I think you can.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I guess maybe this is like a naive question because I'm not in this world, but
Okay.
is it just so obvious? Which, like, some of the stuff is obvious, like if it ends in mirin, right? That's really easy. But some of it, like you said, oh, these are beta blockers, and this is how you remember what the beta blockers do. But is the classification of the drug something that is really easy, and so you don't have to worry about it, or do you also kind of need to memorize that
You
step?
have to have tools, tips, which is my next tip on how to remember this classes. Visualization, tip number three. So visualization, one of the things I talked about in the earlier episode was my ugly drawings on the board and funny sticks in the head. So if you have a way to visualize certain, it helps so much. If you have a story, your grandma's taking this. Like, I have a story about cancer meds because my mom died of breast cancer and I didn't know I'd be a pharmacist later on in life. Vaso for vasodilator. If you picture a vase that expanded to help with blood pressure, that's good. Now you know that vasodilators are for blood pressure, and you have a picture of a vase visualization. Another thing, I have there's a YouTube channel that has really good visualization techniques, and this is one example that I like to share. There is a picture of a boy and macaroni and cheese, and the boy was throwing up. My students love these examples. So it's a macrolide macaroni and cheese. The story behind this, the boy ate so much of the macaroni and cheese because he likes it so much. And then he kept throwing up. And one of the side effects of macrolides is nausea and vomiting. And there was the word throw up because macrolides end in thromycin, azithromycin. And so that picture, my students never forget that. My story about Cialis, tadalafil, if you visualize it, it's so easy for you to remember, tie it to the class or the group. And like I said, this prefixes on drugs or roots or routes or medical terminologies, they came from Latin words. And so sometimes it's hard to put together the two. And the reason I'm telling them the Latin words is so that they have a better understanding. They will not remember the Latin word, but kind of made sense to them. Oh, that's where by mouth came from, per orem. And vaso, Latin or Greek, means vase or blood vessels. And so it dilates the blood vessels. And so if you can make a story or you can associate, visualize something about the drug, It doesn't have to be because of its generic or brand, but a story that's dear to you. My sister's taking it, my mom's taking it. I always pick it up. You have that picture. And I remember that picture of a little girl, a couple more than 4 decades ago, when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer and I was handing her medication. I never thought I'd be a pharmacist 4 decades later, or 3 decades later. And so that was a story dear to me. I'll never forget that drug.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it. It doesn't matter what you're memorizing against, as long as it just kind of works for you and it just helps you remember it. And the things that are going to work best for you are probably things that are very specific to you. So it's about finding those things.
Yeah, we all have stories. Not everyone probably have siblings, but we all have moms. So one of the activities I ask my students to do is to review their parents or their siblings' prescriptions. And so they have that association. Okay, my sister is taking this. And then they feel so powerful after learning, that confidence building. If you have a family member who's got prescriptions, just go over it and then visualize, oh, that's why my cousin takes it. It's for his asthma. And you'll never forget that, I bet you.
Got it. Yeah. Then what's the next tip on the list
Tip
for you?
number four, flashcards. So I do have two groups of students, the digital ones and the non digital one. I'm old school. I've been a pharmacist for years. And so I'm super old school. But I'm the tail of the millennials. I'm a Gen X, so I don't have problems transitioning to the tech side. Flashcards, both digital and physical, are both very helpful. So, to each his own. Some of my students, the younger ones, they like digital flashcards. Some of my students, the ones on the older side, they want physical flashcards. Some like a combination of both. Okay. I always tell the story.
Mhm.
It's a fun fact of sorts. So, back in the day, when I was in pharmacy school, there was only white flashcards. And then came the bright yellow, bright green, bright pink. And to us pharmacy students, that was one of the best inventions after sliced bread. Why?
Mm.
These colors are important. And even when I teach, I use different color markers for a reason. Based on studies, 80% of people are visual. And so, if your flashcards are just white, all of them white, there will be no flashes of visuals or drawings or colors while you're taking the test. So, when those flashcards with color, I'm talking physical flashcards first, came, I started putting my drugs for the heart. There's no red flashcards, so I used pink drugs for the heart. I use pink flashcards, and then I actually picture pus for infection or anti-infective. So I either put them in a bright yellow or bright green or white blood cells. Then you can use your white if you don't have any. So what happens during a test when I'm taking a test, any test, those colors, you think that they're just colors, it flashes in your head. Oh my God, I remember this. I wrote it in a pink flashcard. So this must be something for the heart. Same as grouping it by,
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
yeah, the more you group them by class, you're actually grouping them by organs or system they affect. And that's how I group the drugs. Flashcards, physical ones help. So when you make flashcards, this is another tip too. You don't write the whole paragraph from the book that you read. It's flashcards. It's called flashcards for a reason. You flash it, you get the gist of it. But the common mistake students do is they write paragraphs after paragraphs, the retention won't be there. But if you write phrases, important words, and then you flip it, you get it real fast, or even put pictures in it, or draw if you're good at drawing. I have students who are good at doodling. I do ugly drawings. And I remember that there's a recall during the test. Tell me the same thing, Miss L. I did the flashcards method. Going digital, now you can color code your digital flashcards too. And being fancy on the digital side, you can clip and attach images, image of the heart, image of the brain, if it's the central nervous system that it's affecting, if these are drugs that affect the nervous system, if it's skeletal system, you have picture of the skeletal system, you have pictures of the bones. All of those little things that you put in your flashcard, be it digital or physical, adds to the recall during a test. My ugly drawing on the board, they remembered it during the test. The boy with the spiky hair because of the sympathetic responses, fight, fright, and flight with the big eyes. I'm not good at drawing, but then they love it because it's not pretty and it's a pattern interrupt from pretty drawings or curated
Right.
drawings. So they remember those things.
Yeah, definitely. I think flashcards are important. And so we have a PTCE course. It has a lot of review questions, which goes a step further and actually asks you to do like active recall. So it's not just like the flashcard, it's also a question attached. And something that we had built in, but you can also get for free, is called space repetition, which is basically a system that like trains your memory. And so I feel like if you want to do this on your own, and you don't want to buy Achievable, which is totally fine, I would recommend a service called Anki, Anki, which lets you build your own space repetition flashcards online. And it's used by Jeopardy contestants and like people studying for medical school. But it is a lot of work to set up, I will say that. So if you don't like that, you can also do Quizlet or something
Quizlet, I
similar and
love
just
Quizlet.
put them on there. And that's pretty easy. So there's like lots of options to do it digitally. I would definitely say though I prefer digital because it's a lot less work to get it set up. But then again, maybe it's nice to get off a screen once in a while.
Right. So those flashcards, we can tie that to gamification, which is the digital ones wherein you do matching games, there's so much you can do. Like you said, you like the digital one. There's so much you can do. You can even paste a video or a lecture and then it creates flashcards for you. There are flashcards like that. I think Quizlet has that AI capability now where you could upload notes or lectures, be it video, as long as it's public, I believe so. And then it creates a digital flashcard. We also
Hmm.
do gamification on physical flash as far as matching games. Like for drugs, we shuffle them, open the one flashcard, match it with the other set of flashcards, what they do, either their uses or brand and generic or their side effects. So that's another way to do it. A more fun way with the use of flashcards too on top of colors. So gamification.
Yeah, yeah, sounds great. What is tip number
Tip
five
number
here?
5 is acronyms. It's tied to our mnemonics, but acronyms is really A, B, C, D, which I mentioned earlier. The A, B, C, Ds of hypertension, like I said. So A would be your either ACE inhibitors, angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, or you can add your alpha blockers in there too. B would be your beta blockers. C would be your calcium channel blockers, and D your diuretics. Okay, just the same as King Henry died drinking chocolate milk. And my students added at McDonald's. If you're trying to remember the prefixes for your metric system, kilo, hecto, deca, deci, centi, milli, micro, and those are mnemonics. Roman numerals, my students have mnemonics for Roman numerals too, and they share it. I value xylophone like cats do music. So that's your I, V, X, L, C, C, D, M. And those came from them. And I always share that whenever we learn something. I always tell them, you just don't learn from me. I learned from you. That's your acronym. Whatever you can put together. But remember, funny sticks in the head, unconventional sticks in the head, crazy sticks in the head. So if you try to make it funny and conventional, or even a different language, I hear my Spanish speakers when they review drugs, they use Spanish and sometimes they're curse words, but don't say it out loud. So it's just them, it's their group, they're talking about it, and anything that's like that is going to be funny and it sticks in the head. So most,
Anything that works,
yes.
basically. Like that's kind
Really
of it doesn't.
works.
If it's a curse word, fine, as long as you maybe don't say it
Yeah,
out loud when
they're
you're at the test
groups, so they
center.
have their own groups. As long as you're quiet, you're teaching each other, which is one of my tips later.
Yeah, very cool. What is your next tip then?
Tip number 6.
We're going down the list.
Storytelling. Storytelling. So be it it's tied to your visualization, but this time it's stories. Just like that boy who ate so much macaroni and cheese, you created that story to remember macrolides, throwing up, thromycin, side effect, throwing up. And so that's storytelling, and maybe your own stories. When I teach pharmacology, like I said, I don't like to use um, PowerPoints as much as possible. I talk about previous patients, side effects, or my mom's story when she was picking up prescriptions, what we tell patients who are taking grapefruit. And again, funny sticks in the head. I don't think I can tell the story that I love telling that my students want me to share all the time, but it's censored. So I'm not going to share that story. Sick in the head, if you have, especially if you have family members or there's something that happened to you, or you put together some words that are funny, silly, whatever language it is, as long as there's recall, you tell that story to yourself.
Yeah. And it's not only that, it's that stories are like a lot more memorable than even like an acronym, right? Like I feel Santa dying from drinking chocolate milk is just gonna be something I'll think about in a couple of
King
weeks.
Henry died drinking
Not
chocolate
even
milk,
trying to
right?
study for this.
Yeah, and then my student added at McDonald's. I said, "Where did that McDonald's come from?" The MC, MCG. Oh, King Henry died drinking chocolate milk at McDonald's.
Yeah, that's great.
It,
Well,
you want me to go tip number 7?
yeah, let's do
Okay,
it.
tip number 7 would be audio and repetition. I think I mentioned this in the earlier episode. Um, so I always tell my students when you're studying drugs, the different medium. So if I have different medium of instruction, they should also have different medium of learning, right? So for me, I have audio lectures, no fancy recording, just my phone, and they can listen to it. I had one student who said he was listening to my pharmacology storytelling before bed so he can remember the drugs. And when he woke up, he said, I thought you were in my room. Okay. But you don't have to have somebody record it. I want to emphasize this. I did have some students who not only did they listen to my audio lectures like a podcast going to work or going to school, 30-minute drive, 40-minute drive, they also recorded their own audio. So you can still buy those old recorders, which we did back in pharmacy school, the little recorder, and she used that. So while she's studying the drug, she's recording herself, brand generic in class, and then she transfers that to her phone, listens to it to her hour drive. It doesn't have to be somebody
Hmm.
else's audio. It can be your own audio. Now you don't have to have that middleman or in between tools. You can just do audio recording on your phone straight. And there was an app, I don't know if it still exists, but this was an information from my student called Songify. So she said she's going to read all these drugs, brand, generic in class, and it turns it into whatever song genre you like. So my student, she liked rap. So the
Oh,
drugs were
that's so
converted
funny.
into, I have to look into that if it still exists. It's called Songify. So she said, I love rap and R&B. And so it converts my 10 drugs. I test them 10 drugs a week. It converts my drugs into a rap song. I said, "Oh my god, I want to hear it." And it was so cool. So you can make it probably classical or whatever genre, but she said you choose the genre. Audio. Why audio? Repetition. Repetition is key. You don't have to see a person explain what the drug does, but you have to listen. You have to listen to how it's pronounced. Are you hearing another prefix, suffix like stone, olol, sartan, pril? If you record that, you're going to be familiar with this common denominators or common suffixes. And so audio and repetition
Mhm.
works a lot with recall, especially with drugs. Not for math. Math has to be
Yeah.
seen, right?
Yeah, I think also it's important to have basically multiple ways of studying, and it's one of the things that we do with our finance courses, and I think we're going to add it to the PTC and medical courses soon, is that audio component. But you can also do it yourself. So something that you can do now, thanks to AI, is you can go to 11 Labs or something else if you want, but that's the one I recommend. You can put all your notes in there. First, you can go to ChatGPT and you could say, take all my notes, write a script that will help me memorize all this in an audio format or something like that. Like mess around with it. And then you can go to 11 Labs and have it be put in an audio voice. And you could probably pick one, or you could literally like use your own voice and they'll clone it. And so there's just a lot of little things you can do now that just like you can, it's really easy to transfer information from one form to another when that used to not be the case. And so for your audio practice, I would highly recommend doing that.
Yes, I agree. Number eight, it's tied to our previous topics, interactive quizzes, which is we mentioned gamification, we mentioned digital flashcards. So those digital flashcards can be transformed, or there's a feature where you could make it into a quiz, a matching game, or I'm trying to think of Quizlet because Quizlet has those, but I'm sure there's others. You can do Kahoot as well, interactive quizzes. If you're with a group, studying with a group, Kahoot would work too. Individual, Quizlet, or I'm sure there's so many. You can create your own quizzes or you can find quizzes that are available to you. I love using Canva as well because the graphics are just nicer on Canva. You can create your own flashcards and make it into a quiz on Canva with an AI component as well. Interactive quizzes doesn't have to be digital only. Like I said in my earlier example, we flip flashcards, physical flashcards, one set for generic name, one set for brand name. You match them. Or one set for generic name, and then one set for the use. I made word searches using AI for drug words. I made crossword puzzles using AI for drug words. It's not 100%. Sometimes some words are missing, and I'm very particular with that. What I do not recommend is use ChatGPT or AI for the math part. It's an off topic, but I tried to test ChatGPT to create 10 questions on allegations and give me the answer. I'm sorry, 20 questions, and all the answers were wrong.
Mhm.
So, just this is an off.
Yeah, yeah. ChatGPT cannot write material for
Yeah,
you. That is definitely a good caveat. It's more that it could transfer one to
yeah,
another, right? Turn your notes into
yeah,
something that like resembles a podcast
yeah.
script or something
So,
like that.
warning, don't use it for math because I tested it myself. All the answers were wrong. If you're slapping your homework on calculations or pharmacy math or med math, don't do it. I tested it myself. But if you want to create interactive quizzes like I did, word search for drug words, upload your list, it will create you a word search. I uploaded my manuscript and it created me crossword puzzles. But we check it, it's not 100%, but it's pretty useful. And so I'm with you on using AI as a tool in studying and even in creating interactive quizzes, as long as you have the content. I like using Notebook LM as well, because Notebook LM outside of ChatGPT is more. ChatGPT will scour the internet, but Notebook LM
Right.
generates what you feed it. So you have to feed it a document, a file, a video, and information. So I like Notebook LM more than Chat GPT when it comes to studying and you have the materials for it.
And you want to make sure ChatGPT is, or whatever AI you're using is not wrong. That's the biggest issue.
But tip number nine would be practice, patience, and consistency, which we talked about in the previous episode. You have to have consistency in studying. I mentioned as well that I took both the PTCE and the EXCPT to show my students that even if I'm a pharmacist, I'm not required to do this. I'm willing to do this to take a peek, to experience what you're experiencing or what you're going to experience and share with you my experience. I took the PTCE in a testing center. I took the EXCPT at home proctored. So I made a conclusion based on my personal experience to not take it at home. That is my advice. Take it at a testing center. But going back to practice, patience, and consistency, not because I'm a pharmacist, I didn't study or I didn't practice. I got a book and did all the practice tests in there cover to cover. And that's what boosted my confidence to tell me I'm ready. I paid for the practice bank. Oh, at that time there was no practice bank. I paid for the pre PTCE practice test and checked my score as my final validation. Because isn't that a shame? Like I'm a pharmacist and then I'm going to fail this test. But I also want to show all these steps that I did and walk their shoes so that I know, okay, this is what I felt. But because I was prepared, I don't want them to say, you're a pharmacist, that's why you passed it. No, I prepared just like you did or you would. I practiced just like you would. I paid for a practice test. I paid for a book. I prepared. I do it when I'm not teaching. I do it at home. I practice. And consistency. I said practice, patience, and consistency. I want to do the patience later. So, consistency. Set a time, a study time. If it's after your work, if you're working 7 p.m., make that a habit. It takes 21 days to develop a habit, good or bad. So if you have that habit, you do it for 21 days at 7 p.m., you know that it's study time. I have alarms for everything, and you witnessed that. I have an alarm for 5 minutes before I start something, or 5 minutes before I have to really leave. I have an alarm for something. You have an expensive phone. Use every single feature there is. Use it as an alarm clock, a timer, whatever it is. Be consistent. If you set 7 p.m. after work, I'm studying for an hour, or do the Pomodoro technique, 15 minutes, 10-minute break, that's up to you. But be consistent. And on top of consistency, have a designated area where you're studying because your brain flips. Like, okay, it's study time. It changes your brain and it tells you it's study time. In the morning, when I start my class at exactly 8 o'clock, my class starts at 8 o'clock, I say good morning. And if I don't say that, I feel like I don't flip my brain on. So I asked the class if it's not switching on. Did I say good morning? I say good morning. It's the same thing. If you're in the same spot, same time all the time, it sends a signal to your brain that, hey, it's PTCE review time. Hey, it's go time. Hey, this is your focus time. No distractions. Lock the door. Put a do not disturb sign. Like I do have a do not disturb sign right now. I still do those things because it's a habit, a good habit that you form. And last from number nine would be patience. If you didn't come from a medical background and then you started pharmacy technician program, there'll be a lot of bumps, a lot of challenges. I always say it's like studying three languages at the same time. It's like moving to a country and you have to study three different languages all at the same time. And what are these languages? The language of medical terminology, the language of drugs, the language of pharmacy math, And if you want to add the language of law, specifically pharmacy law. So you got to be patient with yourself. You got to be kinder to yourself. You're not going to get it overnight. You're not going to get it in 1 week. But there's one thing I do know, you can develop good habits. It takes 21 days to develop a habit, good or bad, so make it good.
Yeah, that's great. And then that was like 5 tips in one. So what is tip number
Last
10?
one would be teach others. I call it the teach back method. And so, as an instructor, I'm not the only one teaching. I encourage my students to teach the other students. So, what I do, we do have 4 sequences. And so they call themselves freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. You don't have to do that, but if you have a friend, we do the mentoring system. So the ones who've been here on their 4th sequence, I would assign a freshman or somebody who's just starting their first sequence so that they'd be like a tour guide moving to a different country. I wish I had a tour guide, I told them. And so those people who already walked their shoes a few weeks earlier, a few months earlier, can tell them how they're studying, what works, what helps, but you don't have to have that. Your friend, your cousin. I had a student who talks to her parrot. She said, talks to her cat. He said, just don't tell me that the cat responded or the, but do it with people. I think that student lives alone and so talks to the cat, tells the cat, brand generic in class, and the cat nods, at least just somebody listening. But it would be best if you have another person, better if it's another one who's going to take the PTCE, and then you test each other, you teach each other. So when I teach, I always tell them, so this is what I do. When I group, going back to the first step, when I group it by class, so I group it by organ, I would start like this, the nervous system, and then the cardiovascular system, and then the respiratory system, then the gastrointestinal or digestive, then the reproductive, and then the musculoskeletal. And so, if you try to remember the drugs that way in order, that's a combination of visualization, you name it, storytelling. But then go back to teach others. When I did that, one student I saw doing that, teaching another student who just came in. And so the teach back method, you learned it from me, and then now she's teaching the other student, and then that student later on will teach other students. Or your buddy, a buddy system. If you're part of a group, of a PTCE review group, find a buddy in there. Or if you have um, friends, they may not be into medical, but at least have them hold your flashcards or quiz you, even if it's the wrong pronunciation, even if it's, you know what, and that thing too, they're learning too. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that that's for that too. My mom takes that. I hear stories like this day in and day out.
Mm.
And so the teach back method, I'm a fan of that. One of the biggest tip I could give you, teach somebody. You don't have to be a teacher. Listen to an audio or watch a video, learn something, take notes, share that with somebody. And that somebody is learning from you too, the teach back method, because it's like a double edged sword in a good way. It helps with recall, and then the other person is learning from you too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for all the tips. I really appreciate all your help and definitely check out her book.
Top 200 drugs, memorizing made ridiculously easy. It's available on Amazon, and I grouped everything by class. It included drug to food, drug to disease interactions, and everything that could possibly show up on the medication section of the PTCE.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And this has been Board Certified with Lorraine Lohner, and it's hosted by Tyler and Cassandra from Achievable. And Achievable has a great online course for the PTCE as well as other medical courses. You can try them out for free at achievable.me.